evening. I'd like to call to order this special town council meeting, the public hearing on the budget. Please rise for a moment of silence. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Allenson.
Here.
Carmody.
Here.
Fishbein.
Here.
Laffin. Marone.
Here.
Tata.
Here.
Testa. Zandri. And Chairman Cervoni.
Here. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, residents, mayor, department heads. I'm going to review, for those of you who are less familiar with this, how the evening will proceed. This is a public hearing on the budget. The town council will not be answering questions tonight. The council is here to listen to you tonight. Departments are here to answer questions with regard to their budgets for the next fiscal year, the 2023-24 year. I'll read a list of the departments. Everyone, please listen for your department. Residents, if you wish to ask a budget-related question of a department, when you hear that department called, please signal, please raise your hand, and that department head will remain. At the end of the department roll call, I will ask the public if they did not hear a department called. We're asking all department heads to stay until we excuse them to accommodate a few latecomers. 30 to 45 minutes into the meeting, a final call of the department list will be made. Following the final call, if there have been no responses at all for a department, we will excuse that department head for the evening. We'll call departments to the panel table, and we'll, questioners, if you have a question, we only have the microphone that is on your left tonight. If you want to use the other microphone, you have to go up to room 315 and participate in the planning and zoning meeting. The administration of the Board of Education are not available for this meeting because they are on school vacation. The Board of Education will be watching the video recording of tonight's public hearing. They'll have answers to your questions on the night of their workshop, which will be April 19th. So in deference to the people who are here, I'm going to call the Board of Ed last for those who have questions that they want to put on the record. When you have been called forward to ask your questions, please say your name and your address slowly and clearly into the microphone for the record so that it may be heard by everyone recording the meeting. Please do not call out anything from the auditorium. Come forward to the microphone when it's your turn. State your questions. Please be considerate of others with your time so the evening will keep moving forward. With that, are there any questions for the Animal Control Department? Questions for the Board of Assessment Appeals? Questions for the Board of Education? Questions for the Board of Ethics? For the Building Department? For the school cafeteria? For the capital appropriations in reserve? Capital and non-reoccurring, and the capital and non-reoccurring fund? Conservation Commission, The contingency account, debt service, Economic Development Commission, the Electric Division, Emergency Management, Civil Preparedness, Employee Insurance and Other Benefits, Engineering Department, Finance Department, I got you. Fire Department, including EMS, Government Access TV, Health Department, Human Resources and Risk Management, Inland Wetlands, Insurance, Property and Casualty, Law Department, Library, Mayor's Office, Parks and Recreation, pension contributions, Planning and Zoning, Mr. Pagini, are you upstairs at 7? Okay. Police Department, Probate Court, Program Planning, the Public Utilities Commission, Public Works Department, Registrar of Voters, Sewer Division, the 6-year capital line, social services contributions. Those include Wallingford Center, Inc., Wallingford Center, Inc., Capital Streetscapes Improvement, Center Street Cemetery, Literacy Volunteers, Emergency Shelter, Columbus House, Public Celebrations Committee, Quinnipiac River Watershed Association, Wallingford Transit Authority, Wallingford Center, Inc. Facade Improvement Program, John J. Neridan RTC Camp, Masters Manna, Wallingford Committee on Aging, also the Senior Center, Art Kuhn of Meriden Wallingford, Historic Program Matching Program, SCOW, Town Council Office, Town Clerk's Office, Veterans Center, Water Division, Youth and Social Services, Zoning Board of Appeals. All right. Yes. Okay. I only saw 2 hands for the Board of Education, so I think I'm going to do the opposite of what I said at the beginning of the meeting. And why don't you come forward?
Good evening. My name is Melanie Risacci. I reside at 9 Platt Drive. I had a couple of questions as it related to the unspent ESSER CARES Fund and coronavirus relief funds. I know the spending in the budget talked about what dollars were spent through 6/30/22, and out of the ESSER CARE funds, there was $466,972 allocated in revenue, but only $17,693 spent, leaving $449,279 unspent. And then in coronavirus relief funds, $1,898,979 in revenue and only $91,659 expenditure, leaving $1,807,320 unspent. These dollars were supposed to be used to address learning loss, chronic absenteeism, the mental health crisis, 20% of it for learning loss. So I'm wondering has there been more spent this year? The funds have to be spent by December 30th, 2024. What are the plans for those dollars? There's 5 areas where they could be spent in: staffing, facilities and operations, academic recovery, mental and physical health, technology and special populations, and also the U.S. Department of Ed is offering extensions on those dollars. I don't see anything in the budget that increases anything related to mental health supports. I see that there's 4 certified school resource officers. There's also a security grant that was around $111,000 that I assume potentially was also helping to offset that to bring the school resource officers to the middle schools and the high schools. So I'm looking to know, are we spending those dollars on increased mental health supports? What are they? What are we spending the dollars on? Are we really leaving that almost $2 million on the table, or over $2 million in federal funds? That's the first part of the question. I'm not sure. Also in lines 710 and 720 on the budget, I see that site improvements and building improvements are blank, but there's a capital request approved for bonding for $2 million. How are those interrelated? Is there anywhere in that budget where we're talking about the studies for potentially having 1 high school? Where do all of these things fall into these pieces on the budget? And then lastly, I noticed that there's cuts, and I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time. This is my first time at a budget meeting, but that altogether there's about $3.6 million in cuts related to town services for children, youth, and families. $20,000, the request was reduced for youth and social services, $5,000 for social service contributions, $51,000 for the recreation department, and $3.515 million to the Board of Ed. So altogether, it's about $3.6 million in cuts for services that could potentially be for children, youth, and families. And I do have a question in regard to that. Why are we cutting so much as it relates to the departments that affect our children, youth, and families the most?
Thank you. Look for your answer on the 19th.
Hi, I'm Randy Jasmine Carlone. I live at 20 Buttonwood Circle. My question also for the Board of Ed. I noticed in the budget that there's a position cut for special ed, and I wanted to know what data they have used to arrive at this decision. Do they know the number of students with IEPs and 504s in the public school system? I've asked the Board of Ed and the superintendent's office for this information twice. I still have not gotten an answer. I do know there's 253 in the high school. I don't know how many are outgoing, how many are incoming, and I don't know middle school and elementary school numbers, but it's important to see how these numbers shape up between this year and next year. And also, this is not just a number of students with them. Do they know what's in these IEP and 504s to know how much attention and how much focus and how much the teacher needs to pay attention to these students to make sure they're getting the proper instruction and the proper support that they need? So again, it's not only a numbers game, we're talking about a quality as well. Thank you.
Thank you. The next line for which we had questions was the contingency account.
Bob Gross, Long Hill Road. The question is, why the increase in the contingency this year, about $400,000?
I don't think the mic is picking you up.
How about now? Bob Gross, Long Hill Road. Sorry about that. The question is, the contingency is about $400,000 greater than last year. Why?
So there's two accounts in contingency.
Correct. They both increased.
All right, so the current year general purposes increased because the budget went up $6 million more.
Okay. So it's a percentage of the budget.
And the accrued expenses, that one is that number comes from HR.
So you have some outstanding contracts maybe, or?
Yes, there's contracts that are in negotiations that,
So they're just estimate. Okay, but it went up, 400,000, which is,
well, there's at least one contract that's going to be out a full year, and now there's more adding to it at this point.
okay, because we don't see any of that. And 400,000 is a sizable amount. Didn't know if you were just putting in additional money, but if there's a reason for it, then that's it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions regarding the contingency account? Electric division.
Bill Comerford, 5 Broadview Drive. Is somebody going to answer the question, or do I just ask a question?
We have somebody here from the, Mr. Hendershot, would you like to?
And
Come on up.
Chairman Cervoni, for clarity, does the public get to come back like we've done in the past and ask a follow-up question to tonight's when it's brought up?
That's up to the council to decide.
So we won't know until that night?
We'll let you know as soon as we know.
Item 596, streetlights and signals, maintenance.
What page is that on?
68. Might want to speak into the microphone.
It's account 596.
Got it, okay.
I can speak to that if you don't want to.
Okay, what's the question?
Is your mic on?
I don't know, is my mic on?
Your mic's on.
Okay. Last year was budgeted $500. This year it's budgeted at $24,805, which is a substantial increase. I was hoping Mr. Bucieri was here because we had a long discussion about this last year about the neglect of our streetlights, our decorative streetlights throughout our downtown. And in further discussing with him, he stated that nothing's been done as far as maintenance goes, and that was one of the projects that he was looking at addressing this year. And I didn't know, seeing the substantial increase, if that's what was this based upon.
Yes, that's what this is. The division plans to, in a orderly fashion, and they've already completed an sort of an inspection / inventory of all the ornamental lights. And they have, for lack of a better word, sort of a pecking order. The plan is to take existing new stock, replace the worst looking lights, and send those to a vendor from whom we have indicative pricing, but we have not yet formally bid this service, to have the posts reconditioned and repainted. Then they come back in as new condition and are used to replace the next worst set of lights on the pecking order, and so on and so forth. And this is our estimate at this time of the cost to accomplish that.
Okay, so I'm glad that something finally came out on this, that we're moving forward, and hopefully we're going to proceed in a positive way, because it's kind of sad that we let him get to the point where we're doing this now. Actually, I hope it was a lot more, because I think a lot more needs to be done. Thank you.
Anyone else for the electric division? Thank you, you're all set.
Oh, and so everyone knows, the reason Mr. Bucieri is not here this evening is he's no longer employed by the town. He took a job with a new employer. It started last week.
Thank you. Employee insurance and other benefits.
Bob Gross, Long Hill Road. I just had a question on line 5, it's on page 26, or was that 28? Need better glasses. Page 28, it's line 55955, health insurance. It's gone up almost $2 million in 2 years. Percentage-wise, it's over 20%. Just wondering if it's the same plan, or have you shopped this plan, or have you looked at funding through the state?
So I believe we're in the second year of a 3-year bid with Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield. So we did go out to bid a couple of years ago.
So this is the self-insurance then. So is the TPA a big part of this? How much is the TPA cost going up?
I'd have to look at that. Let me see. That's all part of the cost. We'll look at the network access fee. It's about $225,000. So the biggest cost driver in terms of the renewal is the individual stop-loss premium.
And
That's based upon the projections from Siegel, that's 2.7 million.
and what makes up that number then? The stop loss, we should have a certain dollar amount that we feel we're going to, that's,
You're right. We're at, I think, a 250,000 individual stop loss. So those costs go up, and every year, that's an additional cost to the plan.
but you said it went up 2 million, or is it?
No.
Okay.
It's going up about 300,000. It's 2.7 million from the current year.
For the stop loss, 250,000.
That's correct.
And did we price that at, say, 500,000, and play the numbers to see what that, and how many people fall into that? I'm just saying, because it's a large number here,
Yeah.
we're talking millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, I don't have that information.
I mean, it wouldn't affect the health insurance of the employees, it was just how much that we actually pay out. Yes, no? It's like you paying a different deductible on your home. Sometimes some people go with 0, 500, 1,000, it all depends on what the premium dollars will be.
Right.
Wouldn't that fall in the same way?
Mr. Chairman, this is paid to an excess insurance carrier, I believe. I mean, it's not something that we negotiate. In fact, I think there was a big worry that there was no one who would bid on this at one point. Isn't that correct, Jim?
That's correct. When we had our prior insurance consultant before Siegel, they tried to price this on the open market, and no one would even bid on it.
How many years ago was that?
Say 3 or 4 years ago.
And Siegel hasn't been our insurance carrier for, broker for 3 or 4 years?
I think they've been here for about 3 or 4 years. They took over from Milliman when Milliman didn't want to do the work anymore.
And has this town looked at the state program that other communities are using now?
No.
Because that is Blue Cross. They're the carrier of choice right now for the state.
Mr. Chairman, I believe we feel the state program would be more expensive than the one we have.
Have you looked at it?
The knowledge we have about it, we certainly are not being advised by our consultant to be moving off of the plan we have.
The consultant wouldn't get paid anymore. So with what would it cost you to look at it?
I have no idea what it would cost in time,
It'll cost
other effort. However, the advice we're getting is that our plan is appropriate the way it is. I think for the industry, what was it, an 8% trend?
I think so, yeah.
8 or 9% trend. The cost for health insurance are just steadily rising. That's just the trend. That's without experience.
You don't have to
being
tell me. I'm
But I'm
self-insured.
explaining to everyone. You're questioning. I have a right to explain to everyone. The trend alone, without actual bills going up or more claims, is 8 or 9%. So you can imagine what that does to the cost of health insurance.
I know it does. I'm self-insured myself because I'm under 65 and I don't have an employer that pays for health insurance, so I pay for my own. So I know what the costs are. But I do shop around for it. And the state, when they get involved, they kick out some of the 2% premiums you pay for the TPAs and that type of stuff. So you talk 2.5% on $8 million, $10 million, it starts to add up to some sizable money. Well, maybe next year that the council or somebody will take a look at, because it's the same insurance, it's Blue Cross, and they offer different tiers of it, and hopefully the council will take a look at it. Thank you.
Any other questions for employee insurance and other benefits? Thank you, Mr. Hutt.
Thank you.
We had a question for engineering.
Bill Comerford, Broadview Drive. Page 49, staffing. Years ago, we used to have a sidewalk inspector. That position's never been filled, and I believe was under the engineering department. Is there any plan to fill that position?
I did not request an increase to staffing this year.
Is there a reason why we don't want a sidewalk inspector?
We are content with the staffing that we have right now at engineering.
And we're content with the results. Page 50, sidewalk repair police, 15,000. What is that?
To repair sidewalk at the police station entrance 135 North Main.
Okay, any idea when we knew about this? We didn't know about this last year's budget, or this just came up?
I was brought into the discussion in the past 6 months or so, so yes, this past year.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions for engineering? Thank you. You're all set.
Paul Shardullo, 2 Bayberry Drive. I just have 2 questions. I guess they go to the controller. If you look at page 1 on the budget, which is our summary, it shows the forecasted budget. It shows this year where we're at, you know, the budget, performance of the budget. But if you look at 21-22, it only shows our actuals. So one question I have is, why don't we put budget numbers there?
This budget format follows what the charter requires.
I'm sorry?
This format follows what the charter requires.
Okay. Well, I guess I would suggest that the council take a look at it, and maybe the town take a look at it, because if you had done that, and I understand the charter apparently doesn't require it, it gives you something to compare to. And if you look at 21-22, our budget was $177.1 million. We spent 170.1. So we underspent by $7 million. And that's a pretty significant number. In particular, when you consider that you used last year to forecast this year and next year. You got to have a baseline. So I went back about 4 years, and it turns out that in each of the last 4 years, every single year, we underspent dramatically, millions and millions of dollars, if you compare budget to actuals. So given that, this gets to my second question. When you look at the budgeted numbers, as I said, this year, or in 21-22, the budget was 177.1. On the revenue side, because you have to have a balanced budget, we put in $7.9 million from the general fund to balance the budget. So what we're saying to the public is, hey, we're going to put in $7.9 million because we don't want to raise your taxes by that amount. So we're going to compensate for a low base by taking money out of the general fund. But it turns out we never use it. So that's my second question. Why do we put it in there? Why do we permit that to happen? Is that a normal process? I don't really know. I'm not a finance person.
The budget has to be balanced. You said it yourself.
I'm sorry?
We have to have a balanced budget.
Okay, understood. Now, we all know that, and this has come up a number of times historically in council meetings, when you take money out of the general fund and you really intend to spend it because of a low baseline, next year you got to come up with the same amount because you're still short. So it begs the question of, do we really plan on spending that money? Or is it simply there to help justify balancing an inflated expense budget? And I've made this point numerous times, as you know, that we do have an inflated budget every single year. In my opinion, this facilitates it. So again, I look at this year's budget, and the forecast for this year is that we're going to spend up to budget $180,703,000. Our actual performance through the first 7 months is about $16 million below budget. So I think that indicates that, you know, this year, again, we're going to have a big surplus. So what's happening is we're putting the money in to the general fund. And then at the end of the year, we're putting it back into the general fund. And in some years, in fact, the last 4 years, we've actually added $3.8 million to the general fund. So I guess I would say that the council is constantly approving an inflated expense budget. And I don't think that using the general fund is appropriate to use in that way. And basically what this does is it gives the administration, by approving it, it gives them carte blanche to spend up to that inflated amount, so they can never overspend. Personally, I think it has to stop. The council needs to deal with it. I don't think it's serving taxpayers well or residents. And I think it has to be changed. And I certainly hope that the next administration will start to move in that direction. And as a new friend of mine, Riley O'Connell says, it's for our future. We have to change it.
Mr. Gross, if you wouldn't mind, before you start, you don't have to sit down, but are there any questions for planning and zoning? All right, there being none, Mr. Pagini, you can move on to your next meeting. Mr. Gross.
Bob Gross, Long Hill Road. Page 10 to the controller.
I guess the mic is not picking you up.
Sorry. Page 10, use of money or property. Interest on investments, 44010, $1 million. What is that?
It's investment income from general fund cash being invested in money markets.
Okay, so approximately how much money is in the money markets to generate that then?
It fluctuates. We get lots of money in July, we get lots of money in January, and we spend it down through the rest of the year.
So it's in money markets or T-bills, or how do you invest the money?
It's a money market account. It's liquid.
Okay, with whom?
We have multiple banks.
Banks. So each one's greater than the 250?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just, I mean, these are the times that we need to pay attention to those types of things. So you don't use a brokerage account, or you don't use the Treasury?
Can't use a brokerage account.
How about the Treasury?
Statutes.
How about the Treasury? United States Treasury?
Currently, we do not.
Okay, but you could. Okay, no, I'm just asking. I'm just asking, you know, you're talking, you have to be talking 10, 15, 20 million dollars here, cash? You have to be
Yes.
talking more than 20 million, really,
Yes.
in cash. So in today's world, it's just something to keep an eye on. Nothing against any bank, and we won't name any banks, but you just wouldn't want to have 8 million sitting in a bank today if it got frozen on you or something for even a short period of time. You just want it, and the Treasury pays better yields than that. And just as a way of investing. That's one. So, same thing here. Page. I can't find the page. Okay. These are tough to change pages on. Well, I'm asking that, will you have it, to Chairman Cervoni, will you have the opportunity to go over revenue side of the budget, ask questions on the revenue side?
You can.
Okay. All right.
I mean, these are questions for the department heads. It's typically how we conduct a public hearing.
Okay. Page 8. CRRA, distributed funds, 620. Was that the end of COVID? Or was that the end of CRRA money?
There's still a little bit left, but nothing that we could use this year because the projects were too large.
So is there $1 million left, or?
There's less than $100,000
Okay.
left.
All right, just asking. And does, noticed in here you have a revenue line for Covanta, and it's zeroed. Is there any reason why we don't receive any money from the plant anymore?
What page are you on?
I'm going to find it. It was on, Mayor might be right. It's not on page 1,
It's on page 9, 41106.
could be.
That program, they're not there anymore. You can't,
Well, they aren't there anymore, but there was a contract with them. And what happened to the contract?
what was that, what's that board?
Mr. Chairman, yes, as has been explained before, there is no contract. It came to an end. Covanta sold what had been the mass burn plant. It's now a transfer station. It's owned by Country Disposal. Covanta is not involved at all, other than they may have lingering responsibilities with regard to cleaning up that site, but that is their obligations to the state of Connecticut. Otherwise, Covanta has no ongoing contract with the town of Wallingford.
That's not the way I remember it. I remember it that when Covanta closed up the trash plant, the burn plant, they had a transfer station. And at that particular point in time, the 5 communities, Wallingford being one, had a contract with them that paid Wallingford and the other communities per tonnage or per bag, you know, per weight that was dropped there. And it was a 20-year contract. What happened to that contract? The last I remember was that you were suing somebody on it.
So you're aware that there were problems, and it went to
Well-
arbitration, and the arbitrator made a decision. Each of the towns received money as a result of that, our claim of breach of contract, and the result was that prior to that, they had sold the transfer station to Country Disposal. Country Disposal was then operating that facility. They could no longer accommodate as the contract required. The contract with the 5 towns required a place in Wallingford for all of the towns to, the 5 towns to deposit MSW, municipal solid waste. They no longer could do that. So we felt there was a breach of contract. We followed the contract, it was subject to arbitration, and the arbitration resulted in money being paid to each of the 5 towns. There is no 5-town project any longer.
What did Wallingford receive for that contract?
I don't have that here.
Was the council aware of that money?
They certainly were aware of it. Much of that money has already been spent out of the CRA fund.
So you
It's
just-
where that money
so you
went,
ju-
into the CRA
So
fund.
you just put the money in the CRA. So the CRA fund had approximately $12.5 million when the town took control of it. It received it from the state of Connecticut that was holding it for the town. So on top of that, there was additional monies that were in there.
I don't know what you're referring to as $12 million, but
The money that came from when Covanta operated the plant and the electricity, the contract with the electricity, that's how the CRA fund was funded.
the electric contract ended significantly
I know.
prior to all of this, which is the reason that Mash Burn Plant no longer was economically feasible.
I'm
We're-
not
They were
questioning.
being paid 22 cents per kilowatt, which was way above the rates in the market, and it could no longer be sustained. When that contract came to an end, the Mass Burn Plant no longer could operate properly.
Not questioning that the money came to the town. Nobody's questioning that. The council was, not this particular council, but council many years ago was involved and the money came to the town. I'm saying, so you just added that money, the money that came from this contract to that. Is there any chance to figure out how much?
I'm not,
You said it, not
I don't
me.
understand your question, so I'm not going to try to guess at what the answer would be.
Is there any way for the council or the public to know what that amount was that was settled upon in the lawsuit with Covanta for the for the trash plant? The last
Our
contract.
law department has all of the records with regard to the final settlements, the arbitrator's award, and the final settlements to each of the towns.
Okay, well, the other towns really don't matter to us. It's just Wallingford that would really matter. Just curious, because you still have it sitting here in the budget. That's why I was asking about it.
No, this is reflective of what was in a prior year. It's not now in the
Zero in
budget.
the prior years. There's nothing in that line. And then,
It's no longer part of the budget,
okay, but you have it in the budget book.
because I forgot to delete a line.
Oh, no, that's why I asked about it, because it was there. If it wasn't there, I wouldn't have asked. But it was there. I remember the budget, I remember the money that came into the plant. And just one last question then, on here in the beginning, there's one line in here that says, I have to find it. Everything's every which way. Page 1, use of money or property. This is revenue, $1,052,000. What is that? Because they're substantial numbers now. They were much smaller previous to this.
$1 million is the use of money that we've already discussed, and then 52,000 is rent of town property.
All right, so it's just taking one line item and moving it over. It's taking that item and balancing it out in the budget book.
Page 1 is a summary. All
Okay, so
all
page
these
1
things
is just a
roll
summary.
forward.
Okay, it was a different amount, so you totaled up that line item, and then it became that number. Okay, thank you.
All right, we're going to pause at this point. Are there any members of the public who have come in since I called the list of departments? So nobody new in attendance, then the following departments are all set and the department head can leave. Animal Control, Board of Assessment Appeals, Board of Ethics, Building Department, Capital Appropriations and Reserve, Capital and Non-Recurring, Conservation Commission, Debt Service, Economic Development Commission, Emergency Management, Civil Preparedness, the Fire Department and EMS, Government Access TV, Health Department, Human Resources and Risk Management, Inland Wetlands, Insurance, Property and Casualty, Law Department, Library, Pension Contributions, Probate Court, Public Utilities Commission, Registrar of Voters, Sewer Division, with respect to the social services contributions, everybody but the Center Street Cemetery can leave. Town Clerk, Veteran Center, the Water Division, Youth and Social Services, and the Zoning Board of Appeals. Right. And if you've already been up, yeah, you're all set. Sorry about that. Electric, you're all set. All right. Next department is the Mayor's Office. You're all set.
Bill Comerford, Broadview Drive. Mayor, it's under regular salary and wages. Doesn't say how many employees other than yourself. What is the mayor's salary as we speak?
I believe it's approximately $96,000.
96,000. Okay. And the rest of it, how many employees are, it doesn't, oh, there it is, I'm sorry. One management and then total staffing's 4. Okay. Now, based upon the charter, if somebody, if you authorize, or excuse me, if a department head authorizes an expenditure of funds, it would have to be run through your department for a social benefit, correct? And is there an expense line item on this?
I don't understand your question.
For example, I believe the EDC purchased the cement barriers that were all put around Gitanos and so forth, and it was a purchase through EDC. And then Public Works moved them around, placed them, housed them at Public Works, I believe. And that can be done, but based upon the charter, it says that you have to give approval for it, and then that money from EDC has to go to Public Works. And it's supposed to get your approval. So I'm just curious as to if that's reflective anywhere on your budget.
No, the money doesn't, if the money was spent out of Economic Development Commission, then they spent the money, they purchased whatever the item might be, it then is used by Public Works to provide, in this case, the outdoor dining. But the money doesn't move through the mayor's office or anyone else to a different department. That would take a transfer of money approved by the council.
So when they purchase them and then Public Works does the work, based upon the charter, you're supposed to approve it. Am I correct by saying that?
Well, ultimately, all of the departments are subject to the supervision of the mayor's office.
Okay, and then also that they were supposed to reimburse Public Works for the use of equipment and so forth.
Who was supposed to reimburse?
EDC, the requesting department.
Why would they have to reimburse? If they purchased the item, that was their contribution to seeing something accomplished, and then Public Works took over and saw to it that there was a constructive use for what was purchased. There is no reimbursement involved at all.
But that's what it states in the charter. All right, that's why I wanted to ask.
I think we just disagree.
No, well, the charter's clear on it. I'll bring it up hopefully next time. Thank you.
Any other questions for the mayor's office?
Bob Gross, Long Hill Road. Is the grant writer in your department? Is grant writer in your department?
Currently, the grants are prepared by the program planning office, and that currently is supervised by the mayor's office.
I didn't look at this one, but since he's asking about the mayor and number of employees, do you have a full-time grant writer? Or are you looking for a full-time grant writer?
We have an administrative grant technician.
Because, as we've discussed over the last couple of years, there's a lot of grants that have seemed to be available, but not it doesn't mean you're getting them, but not asked for. And if you had a full-time grant writer, and from what I understand, she's very capable, but there's only so many hours in a day because she does other things, from what I'm told, that it would be nice to hire somebody as a full-time grant writer. Because are you still pursuing, and because I didn't see it in the budget book here, the train station? Are you still pursuing the $1.75 million of town money?
We are pursuing that, yes.
And is that in the budget here?
No, that wouldn't be in the budget.
That'd be an additional appropriation in next year's budget?
Well,
if you got the grant.
if we receive the grant, then we need matching funds.
Right,
But we are not budgeting now for the matching funds, no.
So that would be on top of this budget. If you got that grant, it'd be another $1.7 million additional town money.
I don't know that's $1.7 million.
That's what you said last
But
year.
there would have to be a matching sum of money.
Okay. So a grant writer would be very beneficial to the town and more than would pay for themselves. And hopefully, I don't know if this administration will do it, but hopefully the next will. Thank you.
Any other questions for the mayor's office? Moving on to Parks and Recreation.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'd like to welcome our new chairman of our Parks and Recreation Commission, Mr. John Sullivan, asked to join us this evening.
Thank you. Welcome.
Bill Comerford, 5 Broadview Drive. I don't want to keep these guys later by having some questions on the back part of the cap, I believe it's called. Bear with me. Well, first off, all the lights that are on the parks, is that something that you guys pay for as part of your budget, or is that something that's gone through the electric division?
As far as service or repairs?
Turning them on, keeping them on, shutting them off.
I believe that comes through the Public Works Department. We do not have a bill for that.
Okay, because I was concerned, one of the meetings that I attended, Councilor Marone and Tata had taken pictures of some of the parks, one of them being Community Lake, and they showed a picture of the lights being on 24/7. They're still on today. So I didn't know when, obviously everybody, you guys were here when they brought it up. Was anything done to contact whoever's in charge? That's why I wasn't sure if it was part of your budget, or if it's Public Works, I'll ask them, or if it was the electric division. So there has been no communication saying, hey, what gives, or when there's a problem, the protocol then goes back to Public Works?
I do appreciate the question, but that's not part of this budget right now.
Well, I wasn't sure if it's part of maintenance costs or anything, where it falls under. So it doesn't fall under your budget at all then. It falls under Public Works. And as far as the fields go, does that fall on maintenance of the fields? Does that whole category fall under Public Works also?
Again, that I do appreciate your question, but that does not have anything to do with our budget that's in front of us today.
So the answer is, as far as the maintenance goes of the fields, There isn't a line item anywhere on this budget for that.
That is not in my budget.
Okay. All right, I'll wait for Public Works then. Thank you.
Anything else for Parks and Recreation? There being none, you guys are all set. Thank you. Police Department is next. We had a question for the Police Department.
Yeah, Bill Comerford, Broadview Drive. Just a couple quick ones. The sidewalk, chief?
Say again?
The sidewalk, the $15,000 replacement that was discussed earlier, they were only made aware of it for 6 months ago. A guesstimate, how long has it been like that?
The sidewalk, a report that was done by the fire marshal's office, I believe in the fall, identified that, and we ended up waiting till after the winter time to do it, at which point we put in this year's budget, this upcoming budget.
It's in your budget or
It's in engineering's budget. It was originally in our budget, and then we went to the engineer's budget.
But you're aware of it for probably well over a year?
Yes.
Okay. I've been talking to you for quite a bit, probably the better part of a year, about Atlas One. Is Atlas One anywhere on this budget?
No, I have a meeting with Atlas One on Wednesday to speak with their grant writer. We may qualify for a federal COPS grant, which would give us the system for 3 years for free.
Okay, and if you were to include it with this budget, how much a guesstimate would that be?
Approximately 20 to 25,000 a year.
Okay, and hopefully there might be ARPA funds as a safety net available. Has that been brought up as far as your budget goes?
No, I did not put it in the budget because I was working with their representatives, hopefully to get a grant, so I did not apply for a ARPA grant for it.
And it's something that you're looking, hopefully we can get?
Correct.
Okay. Drones, is drones in your budget?
It is not, because this fiscal I had moved money into a fund to purchase a second drone. We identified an officer that we're going to certify on the use of the drone, so we'd have 2 drone officers. So I do have money for a drone right now in my current fiscal year.
And the drone that you had was recently used for that rescue off of the cliff or thereabouts, right? It was highly
Correct.
successful?
It was very successful. The drone is exponential in the manner that it allows us to do just that. Look for missing persons, suspects, even documenting or taking pictures of an accident scene. It's a great tool to have.
Okay. Just a statement more than anything. I think anything that we can do to help our officers in blue is great. I just think that these things like the drone and like Atlas One, we shouldn't have to be having them beg or so forth. I've been talking to him for a year about this, and it just helps them to help us. And by increasing their budget to allow them to get it, in case we don't have the ability to get the grant, or making them take that much longer, it just becomes frustrating, probably, at least for me, but I would imagine them. So even if you could increase this or you look to utilize some of the ARPA funds even right now for this to help these guys, I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else for the Police Department? Thank you all very much.
And Mr. Chairman, just real fast, the
Yes.
4 ASOs that Ms. Rasachi mentioned for Board of Ed, that is actually in the Police Department's budget, just for clarification.
Thank you. That was helpful. All right, moving on to program planning. I think we kind of talked about that already, so are you all set? Public Works. And We'll go right into six-year capital. Welcome.
Bill Comer for Broadview Drive. Just for clarity, under their summary, it says functions, it says maintaining town-owned sidewalks, which is a gray area to me. Just for clarity, does that fall under Public Works, Rob, or is that engineering? That you,
So, first of all, I apologize. My back is to you. It's just the way we're set up here, so don't take any offense. You know, my best guess, Mr. Comerford, that is, you know, leftover language from an awfully long time ago. For the 22 years I've been with the town, 4 years in this department, 18 in engineering. It's always been an engineering function.
I don't think your mic's working. I can't hear you.
Anybody else have a problem here?
No, I got you.
You're working.
Thank you.
So I'm sorry, I missed that.
So for the 22 years that I've been with the town, the maintenance of sidewalks has always been an engineering function.
Chairman?
Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, yeah. I think there are occasions, however, where there's a failure to clear the sidewalk. It's not beyond the realm of possibility. The Public Works would do it, and then we bill for the work that was done. So there's an overlap that occurs between engineering and Public Works.
I was looking for the inspection end of it. Okay. Now, at the beginning, it said that there was 41 employees, or... Let me get to the summary. Public Works at 36 position, 87, and 41 currently. Is that accurate right now, 41?
So we are budgeted for 41. That includes 5 mechanics, so essentially 35, 36 maintainers, if you will. That's what we're presently budgeted for. Not all positions have been filled throughout this year, but that is the budgeted number.
Okay, because one of the questions that I had, and I'm just looking for efficiencies, and I brought this up in the past as far as efficiencies in Public Works. I'm not pointing the finger. I'm just trying to understand how efficient our Public Works runs. And some time ago, it was concluded by the town at some point that they wanted to do an efficiency study, and they wanted to target Public Works. And it never got off the ground because they were concerned about, you know, what are we getting for it? And to this day, one of the issues that I have, and it's no fault of you, either you two, but we don't know how much a project costs. Start to finish, we have no clue. We don't know how much it costs to paint a wall. We don't know how much it costs to put a curb in. We don't know how much it costs to do anything, because when things are calculated, all the total figures and factors aren't included with that. So we're just throwing darts at a wall and guesstimating, and that's what bothers me. For example, as I drive throughout town, I see, and I could be wrong, but there's like 2 guys that drive around in a trash truck virtually 5 days a week, and then I believe that the trash gets picked up or it gets done by a rotating shift for the weekend. Is that true?
That's essentially correct. So in the season of the nicer weather with the parks being used and athletic facilities, that trash truck does work out in the mornings as well, correct?
Right.
On the weekends.
And then that gets on a rotating shift though, right?
As far as how it's staffed?
Yeah.
Yes, because that is, you know, weekend work is overtime work. It's spread out uniformly or offered uniformly to our employees, so it is rotating staff.
Right, so is it fair for me to say Monday through Friday, you might have 2 maintainer ones, which would be on the lower money chain?
It's fair enough to say there may not always just be maintainer ones, which, you know, for everybody's benefit is, you know, to use Mr. Comerford's term, you know, it's money-wise, salary-wise, it's our entry-level position because it's a non-commercial driver's license position. But that's not to say that at times we may not have a CDL driver who happens to be on, trash duty for a particular day. But
Right, but then when it gets shifted to the weekend, you could have a maintainer, hypothetically, a maintainer 4 and a maintainer 3 on that same truck. Not a maintainer 1, so you're boosting it up, plus it's overtime, right?
that's correct.
Now that's what I'm talking about as far as efficiencies goes, because at what point do we pick up or put out the bid trash pickup for those couple trash cans? How much does it cost? And that's one of the things that I wanted to bring back at the next meeting is if Mr. Bolstromitis can actually tell us, hey, it costs $150,000 for trash pickup, and if we went out to bid, it might be $75,000. Because in my opinion, if we have 2 maintainer 1s that we could be utilizing to be doing road construction or something we're truly paying them to do, their skill set, as opposed to picking up trash, it just seems to me the efficiency just isn't there. That's my opinion. I'd like to see if we could get that number, by the way. To shift gears, let me get to your budget.
And I want you to get to the budget, but I just want to make a point about your statement, and I can appreciate what you're saying, that it may be more economical if the town was to use maintainer 1s only on the trash truck, particularly for the weekends. However, we have a contractual requirement with the bargaining unit to balance the overtime, and that's why maintainer 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s are offered the overtime on that weekends.
Right, but my point is that if we didn't have any of that and it went out to bid, we'd be saving it a whole, and they could be doing something that we're really paying them to do. That's my opinion, as opposed to picking up trash. Utilities, page 52, 848,000, and then your budget is 800,000, so it's a reduction of 48,000.
Yeah, so utilities, and it's kind of self-explanatory. It's water, sewer, electric, gas, propane. It's for all the parks, all the municipal buildings that we maintain. The number is based on a 5-year average. I think what's happened is some of the lower years have finally gotten into that average. So it's an $800,000 number. I don't have actuals for last year, but I'm going to guess it was considerably less than what was actually budgeted. Again, it's just based on a 5-year average.
But it was reduced by virtually 50,000.
Correct.
Okay, and you heard me ask about the question about the lights down at Community Lake. That falls under you guys?
We do pay for the power consumption there. I'll jump right to the answer because I was talking to Mr. Michaels afterwards. We were not aware of lights being left on at Community Lake. He mentioned that it may be the basketball courts. We believe that's on a timer, so we're going to have that checked to make sure that the timer is expiring and shutting off. I will say that, as everybody knows, our athletic fields are used by youth and even adult leagues, well into the evenings. And we've had cases where, because those leagues have access to the light panels, we take it, because we're paying for the power consumption, we take it very serious if lights are left on. When it comes to our attention, it's brought to Parks and Rec's attention so they could take it up at the leagues and give warnings. But we'll look into the one at Community Lake.
Well, I'm just reiterating what Councilor Tata and Mr. Marone said. Maintenance of buildings and grounds is going from 260 to 300,000.
Yes. There's the elephant in the room. It's not lost on Steve and myself that, this last year, the town council, I believe a 8-to-1 vote, elected to form a building maintenance committee. It's not lost on us that, that the town, that the council may be looking at doing more building improvements. I had asked the mayor for an increase to that line item with the hope of starting a programmatic replacement of ceiling tiles and carpeting in Town Hall. I'm thankful that he approved that and has passed that on for the council's consideration. But that is the precipice for the increased request.
And is that enough?
I think it's a way, in conjunction to our staffing increase as well, because I think it kind of goes hand in hand. You know, we're asking for more monies in the maintenance of buildings and grounds. I believe we're asking for some more money in materials and supplies. That in conjunction with adding 2 more maintenance workers, we're just looking to get more done for the town.
Well, it's just been a concern because I don't want to flip on the other end of this, but purchasing services engineer consultant, 25,000.
Yes.
What is that for?
Okay. So this was another request that we had put together. If you look at the line item to the left, you'll see under 22-23 there was $13,500 appropriated. That was actually not originally budgeted. That was added during this fiscal year. And what those services were for was to retain the services of a design firm to look at, evaluate, and give us design specifications to proactively replace the HVAC systems at the library. The library was chosen, one, due to the age of the systems, the fact that they were requiring very frequent maintenance, and the fact that it's a large building and also can work as a heating and cooling center. So that money, that $13,500, and I know I'm giving you a long answer to your question, was to, again, design an HVAC system to go out to bid. Jumping ahead, if you looked at the capital non-recurring request for this year, you'll see library HVAC replacement of $250,000. So that project is what I'll say, proactively rather than reactively looking to upgrade and replace the HVAC system at the library. What the $25,000 request is to do the same thing, get design services here in Town Hall and proactively look to replace the 8 units that serve this building. It was a request I brought to the mayor. Quite candidly, I was skeptical that I may get it, and I was very thankful that the mayor agreed that would be a worthwhile expense this fiscal year.
Tree contracts from 45 to 70,000.
Yeah. So historically, that number's been in the $70,000 to $90,000 range. It was less last year because we were able to take advantage of some state grant monies for public tree services. So our regular $90,000 or so was cut in half for the budget request. So it looks like a drastic increase for this year, but it's actually very typical of DPW's typical expense in a year for tree services.
So do you base that upon the figure or the need?
It's a combination of both. We certainly have to be cognizant in the year where we are with the monies, but it's also very much need-based. If there's a public tree that comes to our attention and it is a moderate risk or hazard, we're going to take that tree down. So I wouldn't, and we would never not take the tree down because of money. We would go to the mayor's office, we would look for contingency, we would look for state grant monies. So it is still very much a as needed basis.
Because I didn't understand. You guys, the Public Works took down a tree in Wallace Park, I'm guessing 3 months ago or thereabouts. I didn't know there was something wrong with it. I don't know. But then there's 3 or 4 more right in a row that got dead branches that are totally dead, that are ready to fall off the tree, and all the equipment was there. You had the bucket truck, you had loaders, you had, I don't know, 6, 7 guys. Now, unless there was an emergency snowstorm or something, it didn't make sense to me that they packed up, left, and now those big 8-foot chunks of the tree are still there waiting to fall on somebody. I didn't understand that, and how something like that could be overlooked. I mean, that's what concerns me, because years ago when there was the Chainsaw Massacre, if anybody remembers that, Mayor Dickinson said that the town was going to hire an arborist. We don't have an arborist. I don't see one in your budget, but to me, it makes sense to have somebody that would be an arborist that could go around and identify this, because in the long run, I think it would benefit Public Works in identifying these things and take some pressure off of Mr. Palermo and Mr. Bolstromitis, because they can pretty much go around during the day, mark them and take them down. It makes no sense to me, because it seems like they're juggling what they have with little amount of resources as possible. Why that's done, again, it's efficiency or lack thereof. I'm not faulting them, it just didn't make sense, because now I got to do the same thing over again.
Yeah, so if I can, I do recall the Wallace Park tree, but I forget the circumstances. If it was completely dead, if it actually had toppled over. Yeah, I mean, we honestly, and I hope you can appreciate, we deal with so many trees. I do remember taking a tree out there and then also installing a replacement tree. We could certainly take a look at the rest of the park to see what needs to be trimmed. As far as an arborist, we do retain the services of a tree contractor. They have licensed arborists on staff. You know, and it may make you happy to know. I don't know. One of the things I did when I came to Public Works some 3 years ago is we started a systematic pruning of street trees, particularly in the downtown area, where we had the arborist and their crew. And it started up at Wallace Park in North Main, worked its way down to Center Street, went down to South Elm, and progressed southerly. We chose that because it's essentially the parade route. But we had them go and trim out dead, dying branches to minimize hazards. So it is a program we still want to continue. You know, I think it makes sense to be doing that in the uptown area of, you know, Whittlesey, North Main, Elm Streets. You know, we'll do that as funding allows us to do.
And I appreciate that, but again, I just think that for a town our size, we should be able to hire an arborist, have them work for Public Works, and be proactive as opposed to reactive, because it only gets away from you, and God forbid something happens and that hazard could have been addressed, or just the maintenance end of it goes. I mean, it's pretty bad. I can't fault these guys. They're not arborists. They're the tree warden. They've got enough other things to worry about. It just seems to me that it makes sense, because I don't know if you guys were aware of this, but the town hasn't had a wood chipper for like 10 years or better, and they finally got a wood chipper, and they finally got a bucket truck. So we might as well utilize those things to the benefit of the town. To shift gears on this proposed 6-year capital, because I think Mr. Boltzmann might have said in a nutshell that, you know, we're under the gun for some of these things that have been, in my opinion, neglected. You got sidewalk installation replacement, this townwide program, $231,000. I don't think that's remotely close to what the number really needs to be. And then if you go down, you've got all these other community parking lot, Wallace Dam repairs, Loughbury Park improvements. What is that, Loughbury Park improvements?
So I'm going to ask the chair, because I believe the Cap Non was a separate, almost like a department, and you know, it seems the questions have shifted there. Is it okay to cover this, Mr. Chairman? Okay. So thank you for accommodating me. So, and I'm sorry, your question was about the Loughbury Park improvements?
Yeah, $175,000.
Okay. It's probably better answered by Parks and Recreation. I'll give it my best shot. So my department, we met with Parks and Rec and Engineering, you know, to come up with a viable 6-year capital plan. Loughbury Park improvements are exactly that, some improvements that the Park and Rec department wants to see implemented starting next fiscal year. It would basically be, and there's already some monies out there in previous Cap 9 years for the pavilion, but eventually at Loughbury Park, we would see a new pavilion, probably in a different location. We'd see some decorative wooden rail, much like Pat Wall Field, you know, a park rail type setting, reconstruction of the parking area up there, and just miscellaneous site improvements.
And the same thing would be for Marcus Cook also?
Correct. So I think if Mr. Michaels was here, what he would say is he'd like to, start to see these park improvements happen, these capital projects, picking one off each year.
Okay, and then scow roof replacement, scow masonry repairs is $350,000.
Yes.
Well, again, I don't want to belabor this, but it seems like we're now paying the fiddler because everything that we neglected is all caught up to us. It's not these guys' fault. It's not lack of funding, spread too thin, but here we are because now we need all new roofs, we need all new HVAC. We didn't even bring up the railroad station because we didn't get the grant both times. And in the report about the railroad station, it says the whole exterior needs to be scraped down and painted at a minimum, and the whole exterior needs to be pointed and issues with the no gutters. So do we just let that thing just continue to deteriorate? So if we don't get the grant, or we have any money in the budget this year to address those issues?
The answer is no, not for this year. I think as maintenance items come up, we're just going to have to address them out of maintenance of buildings and grounds. We're hopeful that the grant application, is successful, and that we have a grant granted with a cost share to improve the historic railroad building.
Okay, and a couple more final ones. Does anybody out of your 41 employees have any experience with athletic turf maintenance?
Not in the form of certifications, no. But the town, we do have a vendor, who does our turf management, does the applications, integrated pest management plans. It's all part of a vendor bid. It's kind of done in conjunction with both departments where I believe Public Works, we're actually paying for the services, but it's coordinated very much with the Park and Rec department.
So basically what it is somebody like Chemlon comes out and has a contract, they come out there, they spray the lawn, they're gone. We don't have anybody in Public Works that knows anything about turf management, watering, fungicides, pesticides, aeration, overseeding, drill seeding, proper integrated pest management, anything about turf, which is the same thing that I brought up last year. Just like the arborist, in my opinion, it would save us money to be able to alleviate some of this stuff off of these two guys and have people hired. That's what their specialty is. Because in the long term, it can save us money. It's not an embarrassment. People that I've talked to, they're embarrassed by the fields that we have, whether they're Woodhouse Avenue or part of the brand new one that was done over at Pragnum Park. And it's not in their budget. And at what point do we end up putting the money in the right places by getting the funding and the resources these guys need? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gross.
Since there was a time there, I was looking in the book here, and it's a question for Mr. Balterbitis, I guess. I noticed that you asked for $7.1 million, but received $6.7 million. That's quite a reduction in the amount. Are you going to be able to do because you guys do, I mean, in my opinion, you're understaffed, have been for years. You guys do as much as you can and do it well. But $400,000, over $400,000, how do you how do you do all that?
Well, I think so. Of course, I noticed that too, and I was like, geez, how are we going to deal with this? But I did note in the mayor's letter, his March 31st letter to the citizens that, and I pulled this actually off of the town's website, the finance. This was the, Tim, what would you call it? Is it the proposed budget, 23-24? The PDF that's up? Okay. It is, on the first page, number 5, he's suggesting, I say he, the mayor is suggesting that ARPA funds be used, and that would make up for the items that did not make the approved capital budget, department capital, out of the tax revenue base, but instead he was recommending for ARPA funding.
So, Okay, so you're saying your shortfall, because it didn't show you're asked for those, some of those items for what we see here. So they were taken out of your budget. We didn't see it, we don't see it in the book here.
Gotcha. Yep. I found it, like I said, on the finance website, the mayor's recommendation. So the items that were not funded out of the general fund, those department capital items, he was suggesting using ARPA funding. And in the total, you're right, looks like it's about $420,000.
So this is to ARPA then everything. So the mayor is spending approximately $3 million on town projects. Has he consulted with the council yet on it? I thought it was supposed to be a collaborative on all this. And I remember early on in ARPA, we can't use the money for those things. Somebody said, it would be nice to see some of the ARPA money go for town-wide projects, maybe a pool, maybe some really fixing up these parks with really nice pavilions, ball fields, turf maintenance to make them really shine. The town has been said all along by even some councilors, well, we can fund the pool. Well, this ARPA money really should make us shine. It shouldn't be just to make capital projects for the town or items. And I'm not saying anything against public works. I'm saying you should get those items. It's just that hopefully that this money, this excess money that's come into the town could be used to make the town shine instead of the tarnished look it has now. Thank you.
Mr. Comerford, you were already up here for quite some time.
I'm sorry, I forgot one question. The 60 Prince Street, you guys are in charge of that, Mr. Bolshermitis?
It is a town of Wallingford property, but we do not maintain it. I believe by the lease or whatever the legal agreement is, the Center Street Cemetery is responsible for the maintenance of the building.
Right, and a couple of years ago, I brought up the fact that it was riddled with dents, and then since that time, since I brought it up, I waited 3 years, but no one did. That whole exterior of the building got resided, correct?
If not the whole thing, my recollection is most of it got resided, not all of it.
Okay, and has anybody followed up to make sure that there's no longer any dents there now?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm just making a suggestion. Somebody might do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, on to six-year capital. No questions for six-year capital? Well, Ms. Kapuscinski, thank you for your patience. For social services contributions, we had a question for the Center Street Cemetery. Thank you.
Bill Comer for Broadview Drive. I just got a question. First off, the letter that Chairman Cervoni sent out, it says, this advises you that before the town council will review and approve your contribution from the town, your agency must provide the town council with the following information. Your agency's intended use for the funds received from the town budget, a statement regarding the impact of your agency does not receive the funds proposed in the town budget, your agency's budget, and your most recent bank statement with account number redacted. Was that provided?
Some of it was.
Pardon me?
Most of it was.
It says all.
Okay.
So you're not in compliance with what the chairman requested, correct?
Yeah, I mean, he wanted the bank statement. We didn't give him a bank statement this year.
You also asked for a budget.
gave them a budget.
You gave an expense sheet from last year.
No, that's our current budget.
So it doesn't show any type of income whatsoever. That's considered a budget?
That's our budget that we're using right now, yes.
There's no income.
We have some income, and it shows on there based on, we gave them our 990, which shows our income.
It doesn't say to supply the 990. This is kind of reminds me of the ARPA. Mr. Gross sat on the ARPA committee, and there were certain things that, whether they're a profit or non-profit, had to comply with. And if they weren't in compliance with that, they were kicked to the side.
Not true.
This is the second year that Mr. Chairman Cervoni asked for these same things. And this is the second year that we don't get it.
I'm going to say my opinion and the board's opinion is we're not asking for money. We have a contract with the town of Wallingford. Correct. The contract stipulates that we receive minimum dollar amounts at a minimum of $80-something thousand. We're not like some of the other agencies who have other things. We have a contract to maintain that cemetery, and that's what we do. And we provide a service for burials and a service for helping people get through that particular time and to mark their loved one's final resting space. And that's what we do. And the town pays the Cemetery Association to do that because we have paid staff, plus, as you know, we maintain the building, we have insurance, those types of things we have to do. We pay taxes, etc. And that's what we use the money for.
Okay, but again, he asked you for stuff, you didn't supply it.
Correct.
I've got a problem with that because they're using my money, and Chairman Cervoni was specific by asking for this stuff. It says must. So, in my opinion, it should null and void the contract because if it's a contract, why doesn't it go out to bid?
The town is free to go out to bid with anything they have.
So you're not.
I would respectfully say that if you were to go out to bid, I would like to see you find somebody who's on call 24/7, 365 days a year for under $100,000 a year for everything the cemetery does, plus the maintenance of the cemetery, etc.
You know,
it's 10 acres of land, by the way.
Some of these things start to bother me because it's misinformation. And without having the numbers, it's kind of hard to prove, but I'll just give you some facts. This group came up here years ago and wanted to buy a backhoe. They had to have the backhoe. And the question was, will the backhoe fit in the existing building? And they said, yes, no problem. Well, it doesn't. Misinformation. They also said that there's 61 graves.
Was that sometime well in the last decade, the whole backhoe thing? Did you guys?
The backhoe goes back well over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You are correct on that.
So
The
I'm not
backhoe
interested.
also is in the building many times.
I'm not interested
Most
in
of the
hearing
time it
about
is.
some problem from 10 years ago.
I'm showing a pattern of misinformation, Chairman Cervoni, so it's going to lead up to more misinformation, and it kind of helps by having numbers in front of us so we can show the facts. And I'm all about the facts. And usually if you follow the money, then it kind of shows the facts.
I just have to say that our 990 is an audited statement of our finances. It's online. It's done by a CPA accountant. We don't do it. And I don't know what else we could do. We are a small organization. We don't have an accountant on our board or anything like that. We have to pay for that 990, which is public information, because we're a 501c13.
Okay, so a couple years ago, I had asked this question before I still have yet to get the answer about the garbage headstone because, in my opinion, it opened up the door for additional revenue.
What does that have to do with their budget?
Because I wanted to know where that headstone originated from, number one, and why is it taking 3 years and we still don't know where it came from? And if so, we knew where it came from, we can find out if, in fact, it generated revenue. So can we get that answer, where it came from? It's been 3 years. You must have asked by now, or is it fair enough? I'm asking the question now. You guys can come back and answer that, please.
Really has nothing to do with our budget or maintenance of the cemetery that we maintain for the citizens in the town of Wallingford.
So there's never been any other headstones other than the ones that were repaired that were in the Center Street Cemetery on the premises of the building that you have under your contract with, right? That's what I'm to believe?
I didn't answer that. I said that has nothing to do with what we're discussing tonight. Tonight's our budget.
No, Mr. Beaumont stated last time it was never done, and he screamed period at the end.
I did what?
You said there was never any other headstones on that premises, period.
I would like to know what I said that.
It was...
Still has nothing to do with our
That is totally irrelevant to the budget process that we are currently in.
It does, because it generates revenue. It was April 19, 2022 is when.
And Bill, anything that generates revenue goes on our 990.
That's right.
Anything. Okay, but without seeing it, I don't know. Okay, based upon your lease, your contract, as you say, there's supposed to be no work performed at the cemetery, inside the building or outside the building, other than work for the Center Street Cemetery itself, correct?
That is correct, and that is the case.
Okay. So this last year, is there a revenue line item for selling a Jeep?
Excuse me?
I said, is there a line item for selling a Jeep at the Center Street Cemetery?
I have no clue what you're talking about.
So you're not aware that there was a Jeep stationed at your own building, ever?
A Jeep, he said a Jeep station.
No? I didn't hear your response.
I don't know of one.
No?
Is there any cost or revenue associated with it?
Well, first off, they don't even know the thing existed, Mr. Beaumont. You were not aware of a Jeep down there. Is that no?
I'm not aware of what you're referring to.
Can we stick to the budget, please?
Yeah, it was sold. The Jeep was sold.
The cemetery association doesn't own a Jeep.
Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with us.
Okay. But there was a Jeep that was housed down at the Center Street Cemetery where you've got two members of the Center Street Cemetery that don't want to produce their budget, and a Jeep was sold, and it was sold based upon the same numbers, and it was sold, and there's pictures of it being down at the Center Street Cemetery.
Excuse me. The cemetery has not, to my knowledge, ever owned a Jeep. And therefore, since we have not owned one, we could not have sold one.
And it shouldn't be down there then either, right?
Excuse me?
I says, and it shouldn't be down there based upon the terms of your contract, correct?
There's vehicles down there.
It is irrelevant to what we're discussing.
Sure it is, because it's income. I'll get you the pictures, because I'd like them there, now that we answered one of the questions.
We're not taking exhibits.
Well, this just leads to, we also have pictures of other headstones that were repaired at the Center Street Cemetery. They're going to deny it, but I wanted to bring it up. That's why I'm asking Mr. Zavoni if we can bring it up at the next thing, because when they're back up here, we can bring the pictures, because we have pictures of headstones that are getting repaired that have nothing to do with the Center Street Cemetery. We have pictures of Jeep that was sold, and there's a picture of it housed there for quite a while. That's not even supposed to be there, and then the unveiling of it comes off. It's online, same picture, sold, $1,500. Not even supposed to be there. So there's a whole litany of all different things, but without having their budget, without being truthful, answering any of the questions, just like the headstones or anything else. Let me ask another question then. Everything that's housed inside the cemetery, tools and everything else, that's all owned by the cemetery?
The equipment's owned by the cemetery.
Correct.
All the tools and everything else, that's all in there?
I don't know what you mean by tools, Bill.
Tools. So, if you walk in the garage, everything gets in there. Tools, wrenches, air compressors, everything gets in there. Your whole list of, because we don't have it. It's all owned by the cemetery, and it's purchased with the money that you guys get.
We do have a list that's on the 990 of items that are owned, and we do a depreciation on some of the items. We lump the small stuff together, as anybody would do. We're not going to put down a hammer and a screwdriver and a wrench.
Oh, but it's all owned by the cemetery then?
I don't know what...
Everything that's housed there is owned by the cemetery.
Are you buying or selling any tools this year? in
Not
this
the-
new budget?
No, Girl
Okay.
Scout cookies maybe.
Okay. As far as the membership goes, that's a revenue stream, correct?
They pay fees of $10 or $25 a year. Some are life members that are
Correct.
paid a one-time fee, a revenue stream of a few $100s a year maybe.
With regard to that, it's about that.
Yeah, so yeah, there is a revenue stream there, but
But it's a source of revenue. What,
A very minimal source of revenue at
Yes.
best.
what's the criteria to be a member?
I don't have it in front of me, Bill.
If you look on the website, anybody could be a member, right?
No,
What would
I don't.
Being a private organization, it can be decided who can and may not be a member.
We're a private organization, Bill.
Therefore,
But that's not what the website says. The website says as long as you're 18 or older and live in the town of Wallingford, you pay your $25 or your $40 for membership, and you're a member, right? So you guys can refuse membership? You can refuse somebody's $40?
You know we can.
How, I don't understand how you, if the chair wanted to join, or somebody in town wanted to join, you would refuse them, but yet you want to take their money based upon your taxes.
We would not take their money and refuse them. We would refund their money.
But you would reject their application.
If we rejected an application, we would not keep their money, Bill.
But
We
there's
would not
no,
keep their $25.
there's no rhyme or reason as to why you would reject it.
It's a private organization.
it's
They
at
have a
the
meeting.
discretion of the board.
Exactly.
But then your website doesn't say that. Is there a reason why you guys didn't itemize everything to the tax assessor's office as far as everything that you had?
I didn't understand that question, Bill. Say
Is
that
there a
again.
reason why you guys didn't itemize all your,
It has nothing to do with the budget, Bill.
well, I don't have your budget, so it clearly does.
You have what we have. We're a private organization, Bill. We're private. It's like Tilcon paves roads in town here. Does Tilcon provide us, the town of Wallingford, with their budget? I don't think so. We're a private organization.
The Center Street Cemetery was supposed to fill out a form for the town assessor's office listing everything that they've owned in order to be nonprofit. It was sent back to them, which I have a copy of, and it says, post office box closed, unable to forward, return to sender. So they don't even have a list of what they're supposed to be in compliance with the assessor's office. And this came right from the assessor's office.
Bill, is that a quad-annual report?
Pardon me?
Is that a quad-annual report? Is that a quad-annual report?
You'll have to ask them. They said
I don't
that
know.
they sent it, but they got sent back.
Because that's not our address.
It's not your address, but one other thing.
And if we got a quad-annual report, Bill, we will do a quad-annual report. All tax-exempt organizations do quad-annual reports. They need it for the state and the feds. I filled out many of them, and they just want to know certain things.
I believe your accountant did the thing, and it said, well, I'll have to find that right in a second.
I've never thought of a cemetery. I do it every 4 years.
So, to shift gears, just so everybody up there knows, and that's why I wanted to kind of indulge you guys as far as all the misinformation like you're hearing right now. I can go to probate court tomorrow and file a complaint with the probate court, and the probate court then would find in my favor because anybody can petition the probate court, and part of that is that in their annual meeting, they have to approve their budget, and they have to list a copy of all their assets. And anybody can petition the probate court to get that. This is the second time they haven't done that, and the chairman even asked for the same thing that should be public record. So we should know where it is, how the money's spent, but we don't. Just like the Jeep, we didn't. Just like the headstones, we didn't. So at this point, I'm hopeful that we can get some answers the next time they come, and I'll supply all the pictures, I'll supply all the facts, because unfortunately, a lot of people don't like to hear the fact, but those are the facts. And There's no accountability, just like this Jeep, just like the headstone. You might laugh, but you know what? At the end of the day, those were somebody's own artifacts that came out of state. And it could have been your grandmother, your daughter, your newborn, stillborn, and total disregard for the care and taking of the headstone. And obviously, you guys must have been aware, and I brought this up before, that that same individual was not defacing, but did repairs that were substandard in Wellfleet. That's why I brought it up. I'll wait to get those answers for the next meeting. Thank you.
I think you're all set.
That's all?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we could invite people to create questions for you, but I think you're all set.
Thank you. Have a good night.
That was the last of the departments that we had questions for, and do we have something for zoning board of appeals? No. No. Yep, that's it. I'll close the public hearing and declare the meeting adjourned.